Very important to know where you come from. So a lot of people are losing their history. My grandmother has passed on, so the history needs to continue to go. They need to be able to share my stories. This is the mom, which is where my Cherokee comes from. Her mom is half Cherokee, her grandfather. My great-grandfather is full-blood Cherokee. This is on one of my grandmother's visits to Seattle when I was a little girl. This is my grandmother here, my mom. And our travels down south, standing in front of the car. I think this is in front of my grandmother's. And the other person in the picture is my sister. My grandmother, I never heard her talk about being Indian. As much as, I don't really recall them talking about our heritage as much until she passed away. Our family is really spread out from New Orleans to what they call the country. Hoping to take a trip this summer, get more information about, the family and the lineage and everything.
The best advice I received from an elder when I struggled with being mixed race was to be asked, so which one of your grandmothers then is unworthy of you recognizing her? And that really struck home for me. There is no grandmother that you can look at, no matter what color you are, no matter what background you come from. There isn't a time where you can look at one of your grandmothers and say, her Irish heritage is unworthy of me, or her black heritage is unworthy of me. I define myself as a Muskogee Creek woman of African American and Irish Scot descent. I was adopted transracially, and my parents were white, and I also had a Korean daughter and a white son. For me, my personal experience, I felt very cocooned by the urban Native community. There seemed to be a responsibility by those Natives that were my parents' age to ensure that I was part of the community because I had been adopted out. I think what's weird for me is that I'm not considered African American enough for people to watch what they say around me in Indian country, so the N-word is used in front of me because the reasoning is, what do you care? It shouldn't bother you at all. Look at you. And it does bother me. But for the most part, I would find that in the urban Indian communities, it's really not about anti-African American sentiment. It's pro-Native sentiment. Are you Native or not? They don't care whether you're mixed with black or not. Are you Native or not? The children, I think sometimes they think I'm too hard-lined or too traditional, and then in other ways they're even more traditional. When my older daughter got her hair cut, she was just mortified that they had to cut her hair, and she was very concerned about making sure that the hair was properly taken care of by somebody in our community. And yet she had to endure the misunderstandings that go with going into a black hair salon and saying, I need you to keep all this hair and I need you to put it in a bag and don't, touch it and don't, mix it with other hair. And having the people that are there want to, be interested. Y'all doing some voodoo stuff in there? Y'all doing, what are you going to do? And that kind of realization that you're looking across the table at a black person talking to you, and usually as a black Indian you're thinking, well, now I can tell you're a black Indian, but you know nothing about your heritage. And this moment right here in the hair salon is a moment that's a cultural difference. And my mother being an Irish Scot Creek, my father being a Black Creek. When you start to see yourself with pride attached to it, it then allows you to start to realize, you know, if I don't have the pride now, my daughters and my son won't have the pride later. If I don't maintain it, I will be that Black girl's grandmother on the wall that she walks past and says, see my Indian grandmother with her long hair and her cheekbones. I don't know what tribe, I don't know her name, but I know she's Indian. That's my biggest fear. I don't want my kids to have so little interest in who I am and who they are and who their grandmothers were that I become that picture on that wall. Stop thinking of us as the joke, she's got good hair, she must have Indian in her. You know, stop thinking of us as the unique person at powwow. Because in Indian country, we're not unique. Everybody that's native, that's grown up native, will tell you that they either have a relative who's Black or, you know, that they grew up on the res with a Black Indian that didn't speak a word of English or whatever. Our experience is unique, and we've been here longer than a lot of people and as long as most people, and we have the right to be recognized as a unique and individual group of ethnic people. If you want to know who you are as an Indian person, then you have to start, and that is by understanding what Indian people are going through now and today. If you don't understand the Native community, but you are of Native descent, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be part of the Native community, but you have to be willing to put in the work.
I know who I am, and society is so judgmental based on how we look. So everybody else sees me, I'm sure, you know, as a Black woman, I think, you know. Some of the things that I've learned in the Native classes that I've taken, and in my research and doing some reading, and how it kind of upset me to find out that Native people aren't very accepting of Africans, and even within the African community and within the Native community, we have our own prejudices and our own animosities towards each other. I didn't even realize that the same thing that happens in the African American community happens in the Native community, of light skin, dark skin, you know, people thinking they're better than others. And I'm like, well, why would I want to identify with people that don't even want me, you know, or want to identify or allow me to identify with them? And so that was sort of the thing that I'm now battling with. Before I was like, oh yeah, you know, I'm going to say this and then I'm this. Now it's like, well, that's not how I'm viewed or perceived or accepted, which even being a Black woman, being accepted in society is, you know, difficult. I'm not going to shun who I am, but I might start checking other on my applications, you know. I don't know. This is something I'm kind of working through still.
Oral tradition among the Mohegan Pequot, because Mohegan and Pequot originally were one people, and the same language and traditions and everything. Mohegan Pequot came into this area of southern New England around the turn of the century, from 1500 to 1600, and they hadn't been here that long in the area before the Pilgrims landed in 1620. They stole the land from the Native people that were here, but they stole the land to work it. So the only way the land of opportunity could ever take place would be to bring in a stock of slaves, because they could never work the land to produce all that it was capable of without that taking place. What happened after they brought in the African slaves in such large numbers, more and more intermarriage took place, as there was less and less of a distinct